2016, 2022, 6 long years that the crisis, call it conflict in the Northwest and Southwest, has been raging on. We have victims, and most of the time when we talk about victims, people only think about the death. People think about people who are physically touched or concerned. They don't even think that some of us who are away from the crisis zone are physically, sometimes mentally concerned and affected. And some of us are victims, and to an extent, some of us are mental patients. That is exactly what we're going to be asking specialists in this studio who know so much about the brain, who know much about mental health. They will be telling us all the people affected directly or indirectly by the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest, mental patients. We have with us Professor, of course I cannot bring you down. We have Professor Felicien Ntoni Nyime, who is a mental health specialist. Professor, we are glad to have you again on this set.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I have another professor here with me, Professor Alfred Kongnu Njamsi. He is a neurologist. He is the founder and CEO of BRAIN. BRAIN is Brain Research African Initiative. Prof, we're happy to have you here. You're going to tell us exactly what happens to people's brain who go through trauma. You're welcome to Press R.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, Do Bertrand is sitting next to you. Do Bertrand is a desk editor in the Guardian Post newspaper. Bertrand, you're welcome to Press R.
Thank you for inviting me, Kilian. Happy Sunday to all Cameroonians out there.
Yes, and generally, we know that politeness asks us to begin with ladies first. I decided this day to end with a lady. It's a lady that you did not have on our posters, on our promos, because her situation is spectacular, it is peculiar. We are going to welcome Mrs. Nyamba Épouse Namata Julien Emily, who is a victim, or she has got out of a very traumatic situation from the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest region. Ladies and gentlemen, just meet her. She is the wife of one divisional officer who was kidnapped in Batubu in 2018, and up to today, she is still living with the trauma of not having seen even her husband alive, not having seen her husband dead, not knowing exactly what happened to him. And we invited her to Press R to come and share her experience here and get the expertise of the specialist to know what way forward. Mrs. Nyamba Namata Julien Emily, you are welcome to Press R.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being here with you.
Yes, we're going to listen to your story. We're going to listen to you. How have you fared? How have you lived from the moment it happened in 2018 to this day, and the way forward from you? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that you will budge an inch. You will not even budge a muscle, because that is what we have today on Press R. Stories that you would like to listen to. They will be emotional. But first things first, Press R with Yoti Kale Lesonge. What the press fed on in the past week. Yoti?
The Horizon spotlights the continuing arrest, detention and disappearance of activists in Anglophone Cameroon, a growing phenomenon the Guardian Post seems to agree with in its article on the armed conflict in the Northwest and Southwest, initially termed Ambazonia Liberation Struggle, is now an extortion and kidnapping struggle, as per a US diplomat. A reality that pushes a Sako-led interim government to take a stand on the purported Anglophone crisis, recounts Eden newspaper. To the Guardian Post, Canada's fresh dialogue to end the Anglophone crisis is happening after a failed Swiss-led mediation. The Post seizes the opportunity to give readers insight on Cameroonians who keep turning to churches and their relatives as mental illnesses skyrocket. They explain that most people would rather live in denial and say it is witchcraft. There's also the increasing crisis to blame, that is the unrest in the northwest and southwest regions and the Boko Haram insurgency in the far north. The paper expatiates. The Horizon, on a rather sad note, recounts that soldiers in Meme Division have killed a father and son who were drying cocoa in a farm, an incident the Guardian Post terms a military blunder. Another edition of the same paper calls on the Delegate General for National Security to comment on the alleged 50,000 CFA francs bribe to get ID cards. Meanwhile, a civilian who has been waiting for so many years already to get his ID card is arrested for destroying identification posts in Bafoussam. Cameroon Insider was keen on the tarring of the Bamenda Babaji Road, which is really happening now. Eco Outlook concurs. As gas scarcity hits Bafoussam, Municipal Updates reports on renewable-powered ovens helping Cameroon fish smokers. Headlines like "It's wrong to think that being bilingual is being a translator" on the Horizon, and Cameroon Tribune mentioning the start of the Elite One Football Championship made news in this week's papers.
Yoti Kale Lesonge for feeding us with what the newspapers fed on in the past week. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Press Hour broadcasting live from CRTV Production Center at Mbaratu in Yaoundé. Our topic again, if you are just joining us, is Northwest, Southwest, even far north crisis and conflict victims. Are they all mental patients? We're going to know much about that with the specialists that we have invited here on the set. We have introduced them to you. And I'm going to start with Madame Namata Julien. You are our trump card on this program today because we're talking about an experience you have lived more than any of us here on the set. 2016, 2022, 6 years. But your experience might have covered the 6 years, but the traumatic experience covers from when your husband was kidnapped and you've never known her up to this moment. Tell us, what's your experience?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I've really been waiting for a time that I can express myself. It has not been easy since 2018, February, while my husband, Mr. Namata Diteng Joseph, was trying to prepare for the 11th of February. That was the 52nd edition of the Youth Week, or the Youth Day celebration. It's something I cannot really recount with some palpable examples because I was just informed by some people that he was kidnapped. I was with him in the house. We made our morning devotion and I rushed to the kitchen to prepare food so we can take breakfast for him to ready himself to go for the celebrations. Unfortunately, I didn't take up to 30 minutes in the kitchen. I heard gunshots and I said, oh my God, what is happening? Let me rush back to the room and meet my husband. How are we going to do it? How are we managing this situation? Unfortunately for me, I went to the room. I couldn't find my husband. I went to all the rooms in the house. There were 4 rooms. I couldn't find him. I went outside in the corridor. I met 3 gendarmes and I asked them, did you see my husband pass by? They told me he left with his driver. When I heard the gunshots, I felt like maybe he has been targeted and the gunshots were for him.
Were they around the house or far off from the house?
The gendarmes were in the frontage of the house and the gunshots was heard far off.
Okay.
Yes. So at that time, I became worried because I didn't know his whereabouts. He has never left the house without informing me that he's going out. So I don't know. Reports came back to me that he was at the field trying to check whether everything was in place and that somebody called him from the field that his chair was not ready, the chairs for the persons who were really supposed to be at the celebration ground were not there, and that they have called the mayor. The mayor was not available for him to bring chairs in the grandstand.
So that was certainly the trap that was set for him.
Yes, I believe so, because he has never left the house suddenly like that. That call must have prompted him to get to the ground to see how to put things together. And later on, a lady rushed to my house and told me, "Oh, madam, there were kidnappers in the field and your husband was there. The car left. We don't know whether he was inside the car or what. And then there was a lieutenant who came in and followed some of the kidnappers, because there were 4 on a bike, 2 each on each bikes. And 2 of them ran to the quarters and 2 to the main road with the car." And I was like, maybe my husband was taken away with the other 2 kidnappers or what. But when I discovered that the lieutenant was on the field, I said, surely he must have done something to rescue my husband. So we kept on waiting and waiting. That whole day, 2 hours passed. I said, what am I doing? How do I face this? It's the first time. I've never heard this. I've never witnessed it. I don't know how to go about this.
Yes, and hours of waiting turned into days, to months, and now to years. What has been your experience? Any news from any quarters?
Up till date, no news from any quarters. I've been doing my findings privately, single-handedly. I've been struggling to get to the ministry, territorial administration, prime ministry. I've been to the presidency. I've been to defense, Ministry of Defense. I thought maybe there in Ministry of Defense I could have something, since they were the ones on the ground to do the search. They told me, no, their drones are around, they will see him, but unfortunately, right up till now, no news. But on the 20th of June 2018, I think, there was this program that was launched by the then Prime Minister on humanitarian plan action, where he gave an expose on the screen. That's where I knew that, or I heard that, my husband was assassinated, because he was trying to enumerate some of those administrative authorities who have been victims, and his name was the first, and it was mentioned, kidnapped and assassinated.
Okay.
So when I got that, I said, oh my God, should I get this from the screen, or I, as the wife, would have heard it from maybe the minister, from the presidency, or from whatever source to tell me? It was really heartbroken. I felt like I was deserted. I was not belonging to a country. I felt like nobody was concerned. How can I hear this from the screen? And that is when I gathered myself. I felt so bad, so downcast, and I said I should get to the ministry to confirm. And when I went to Minat, I met the present minister, Atanganji, and he told me, Madam, we are still looking for your husband. We will see how to get to you anytime soon. But time passed. Now it's getting to 5 years. I've not had news officially from the government to tell me this is what has happened.
Yes, you had other places you cited you went to. What was
Yes, I went to Minat. By the time the minister was giving me the information about the death or the assassination of my husband, I felt like, because before then I thought he would be found. But when I was told that he was assassinated, my whole body crumbled. I couldn't carry my trunk. I couldn't speak. I was shivering and I was losing myself, no control of myself. And I tried to grip the minister, and the bodyguards held me. I said, please, I was not talking. I was just making actions. I want to write. The minister said, please don't write. If you cannot talk, don't write anything. Okay. He just ordered the guards to take me out since I came with my car, but I could not drive. He said, this woman, the way I see her, she cannot drive. You people drive her home and make sure that she is in order. So they took me to the house.
Yes.
And
yes. And you went to other places?
Yeah, I went to the presidency.
Yes.
And I met the director of cabinet at the presidency. He was asking me, Madam, this your story, we don't understand how it happened. Can you tell us? And I asked myself, am I the one to relate this story? I think it's something that is national, and the security men, like the Ministry of Defense, they have put people to... I don't have any story.
Where else did you go to?
I went to the Prime Ministry, and in all of these movements, you go and sit for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. Not once, not twice. I can't count. Sometimes I will go back very broken because nobody attends to me. And the moment I see the person concerned, say the minister, I don't have any tangible response. They don't tell me where he is. They only tell me, Madam, we are still looking. We have hopes. Just go and we will come back to you.
But in your traumatic situation, I trust that the government, the people you met, gave you something to start life with.
Yeah, that I cannot refuse, because when I went to Minat, the minister told me the president had sent something for the family. That was on the 2019 years, the school year. He said, this is a package from the presidency to support your family for the children's resumption and for you to take care of the home since the breadwinner is not there. I was very grateful for that package, and that was what helped me that 2019 to be on the rail. And since then, nothing has been done for us.
Well, pathetic, we're going to come back to you, madam. You just hold your breath. Professor Tony Felicien, when you listen to her, I have goosebumps when I listen to her. You are a specialist.
Yes. When I listen to this story, there is kind of, information that you hear. And now while analyzing, you start understanding that she's certainly she has a trauma. But you also understand that people in front are trying to manage their capacities, this trauma, which is not easy at all. Things in this story seems to look like the person has been kidnapped, but nobody can confirm that he's part of, because they haven't declared that they haven't seen the body. So by confirming a death without the body is also
part of the trauma.
Yes, it's a part of the trauma, and can be a mistake, because I saw some prisoners in this Bakassi matter. They went for 2 years. All their wives, everybody knew they were dead. And 2 years after, they came back, and this was a kind of trauma in the society, trauma in families, and trauma. Some women were already mourning. They were already organizing the death of their husband. They had already organized the death of their husband. Then the person came back. It has happened in Cameroon that people has been cooked after and taken in a different country. They stayed long, and it's just par hasard that somebody said there are some Cameroonians in this place and informed the embassy. Then they could negotiate. So this is the experience. That's the kind of hope that we can have in this condition. That's why people are saying it's certainly a trauma that goes on, but they shouldn't close the door. This kind of expectation that should be kept. Nevertheless, Madame is in a condition of she's living like a widow, okay? Because the kidnapped is part of removal, and the removal is like when somebody is dead.
Yes.
So the separation process, which is mentally inducing trauma and anxiety, that is what she's experiencing. So she is in that condition. She needs to support, definitely, be it financial, like what she said, psychological, and maybe social. But nobody can confirm without seeing the corpse or without a declaration of those who are kidnapped that we have killed. We should keep that
margin
window,
of
yes,
error.
margin, yes, I think so.
Yes, Professor Alfred Njamsi, when you listen to her, what could be happening in her brain? You are a brain specialist.
It's certainly the psychological trauma of going through this kind of situation is very, very significant. It's very, very significant. And when someone goes through such a thing, like Professor Antone said, there's anxiety. It can go right to depression, and it could go into other forms of serious brain and mental illness. But thank God, when we were still preparing for this platform, we were saying that Madam Nambata has really coped with the situation and gone beyond being a victim to trying to help some other people. But it is very, very traumatizing for the brain, because imagine herself not to have her best friend in life, the father of her children, the head of her family, and not to know what has happened. That confusion is very, very anxiogenic. And then she has children, she has responsibilities. Thank God that the government thought about the children going back to school and assisted her in that direction. But even just having an opportunity to be listened to. She's told us her story of how she has to wait in offices long to be listened to, and when she expected that her story is so well known that she would be listened to and not questioned. I mean, she would just be given assistance that she just to be listened to. In some cases, it's even difficult for the person to be able to express themselves, to talk about it, because it is too serious.
She said at one point she couldn't speak
Exactly.
because of the trauma that comes with it.
Thank God she's been able to get through that. And usually in situations like that, Prof. Done and I, we know that in our everyday practice, Prof. Done mentioned, those people, they usually need a lot beyond material and financial support. They need psychological support, because what holds us as human beings together are relationships. Beyond material, the relationships are even stronger, and I think that's the cry of our heart.
You have succeeded to come out of that difficult situation. Professor Njamsi is saying you need more than financial and material support. Where did you get support from, apart from all of that, that has brought you up to this moment?
Yeah, I've had, at one moment I discovered the resources I had got finished. There were times that I sold snails. I will go to the market and buy, my children will come and wash, because I'm coming from an area where we eat that a lot, and it was like a delicacy here in Yaoundé. So my nephew introduced me to it, because at a certain point I couldn't do anything. He told me, if you stay without doing something, look for something that will occupy your mind. So he introduced me into that business. We started selling snails. I was packaging them well and putting in my car. I would move to places, offices, and introduce, and they were buying. So that was one of the sources that I had. And later on, one of my friends, who is also a teacher, introduced me in the sales of bed sheets, which I'm doing up till now to make ends meet, because looking at our salary and the bulk of family, I have in-laws, I have children, I have friends around that are expecting from me, so I have to go extra mile. So my sources, my salary as a teacher, the sales of snails and bed sheets, that's what is sustaining us.
And then we thank God, because above everything else, God must have been there with you.
I can't put that aside, if not of God, really, if not of God. I thank God that I knew him before this incident, because when you read the Bible, you get some stories that gives you hope, like the story of Job. You see how the apostles were killed and all of that. You know that it is not just, sometimes people will say, why me? But I came to understand that people who have a hand of God on them, or you have something precious, you are valuable, the devil will always come to scratch. And I told myself, If the devil has scratched me and I give up and I die, tomorrow they will only say, oh, that woman was having pressure, trauma because of her husband, and that will be the end of the story. And what about my children? What about my sisters and my siblings? I'm living for them. I try to make up myself to be strong enough. I had to develop a thick skin to surmount all the trauma, I don't know. There were times I used to feel as if ants were moving all over my body. I will look, I will not see anything. I will try to like rub my body to come out from the feeling, but nothing. My headache, and I used to feel, have sleepless nights. My head will be like they've put 2 nails inside and they are pulling. I took Valium for 2 weeks, and the doctor said, please, we can't continue with this. So they had to put me on antidepressants, drugs, which made me to be too fat. I became like, God. It was not easy, but I thank God that God was there to see me through all this.
Bertrand will not listen to you. When you listen to her, Madame Nabanta Julian, what do you say? How do you feel?
I think I have just a word to say that she's a strong woman. This is a story that we have reported, we've done follow-ups, and I admire her mastery of how the chronology of events, how government declared her husband dead. She has it. I think that was when journalists like us had news that the official had been assassinated. She's a strong woman going through all of this and still, you know, engaging in income-generating activities in order to make ends meet. And when you even look at listen to her, you have the impression that the officials are beginning to forget about the family. If she can go to the presidency and a top official is asking her, saying he does not understand the narrative or the story. I think the GO was the first administrative authority that was kidnapped officially since this crisis started. There is no way you can talk about an Anglophone crisis without mentioning the administrative authority. So I think that, and there are so many families who are going through this. We have divisional delegates who were kidnapped in Dian. Until now, we've not heard anything about them. Of recent, about 5 priests were kidnapped in Manfi, in Chang village. We've not heard anything about them. So I think that in order to make those who are living the realities of this crisis on a daily basis, to come out from the trauma that they're going through, government has to step up on communication. Because at times, if you even you communicate, you talk to the victims frequently, it even gives them hope and reduces the tension that is in them. Imagine a situation of you staying for over a year without having any official information relating to your husband that was working for the state on a day that was very risky for him to go out, but he was out because he was there to do that. So I think that there are so many people who are going through this, so many families, not only in the Northwest, Southwest, even those who are out of the conflict-hit regions are going through this, because when you think about your family out there, there are days that when they declare 2 weeks lockdown, my mom is a patient, for instance, at times I used to imagine how she survives for 2 weeks, because there are times that even going out to get potable water for families that do not have water at home, it becomes a problem because there is insecurity. Imagine moving in a street that is completely deserted. So I think for us to resolve what is happening, to end the crisis, will help so many Cameroonians. It will help thousands of Cameroonians.
That's the prayer of all of us.
Yes, because so many people are dying.
I want to continue with you. We report and you report on daily basis. Government going to help some of these people who are stranded. They go with material, they go with psychosocial support, they go with finances, they go with, they provide shelter for so many of them. But
what shelter are you talking about, Kilian? When an entire, we've reported cases of more than 60 villages have been razed. There are families that their entire household have been brought down. I don't want to say who did that, but when somebody's house is completely burnt and you go with a bucket with vegetable oil, a blanket, a mattress, where do you want them to stay? There is no shelter. We know that government has rolled out a reconstruction plan, but how do you want these families to survive?
The reconstruction plan is ongoing. you also know that that reconstruction plan has 3 major stages.
We are recovering.
Recovery.
So how do you recover?
All of that. The recovery is going on.
We are talking about mental health.
That's not our topic, yes. That's actually not our topic.
Fine. We are talking about recovery.
Yeah.
Why are you not recovering the mental health situation of those who are victims of the crisis? Mental health is something that is really ignored in the country as far as our health system is concerned. Even when you look at the budget that's allocated.
Is it ignored?
No, I think it's a way of saying it. I think the country hasn't given that importance to mental health because of many reasons. But since 1990, the Ministry of Health is managing with a subdirector in charge of mental health. But that's not the concern. What I want to say here is that all of us are concerned about what is happening in Northwest and Southwest, first of all. Second is that the solution is not that so clear, that be you on the side of the government or in the society. So nobody could put one side in a trap and say, do this to solve the problem. Because it's an interaction, social interaction with complex political issues. So this is not my point. I wanted to go in depth on what Professor Njamshi was saying, that this lady, by listening to her, because we are here analyzing her clinical onset, it happens sometimes when she secretes in her brain some mediators. Those of the mediators could lead to emotions, to fear, to hunger. Sometimes she feels as if she could do something bad or violent to somebody else or even to herself. Hunger is sometimes generated by the substances that have been secreted in the brain. Alfred can come back to it. But even the mood to depression, when you undergo depression, is because at a certain moment of the day, you have some thought that comes to you about the condition. So there is a psychological support, which is a continuous process. And we have to identify that all those cases, each person has his personal mindset. And I'm listening to this lady. She's more a survival person than a victim, because she has tools to kind of come up and cope with her condition. And I think we have to point it. If ever I had to take care of her, I should take in account her capacities, what my junior brother have said. But the appropriate mental health care should be specific to her condition. Now, to be short a little bit, our country needs certainly a regard on mental health issues. But this conflict in the Northwest and Southwest is a particular condition, which is new, because the country needed mental health before the war came in that part of the world. But all the countries, all the part of the world where there's war, mental health applied to war condition is different. So we should now build a new way of implementing mental health promotion, protection of mental health, and taking care of each case applied to that specific condition.
Yes, you're talking about each case, Prof.
Yes.
Her case, now you have given me...
Normally.
Yes, you've told us that she is a survivor.
Yes.
Now there are people, so many of them back there in the regions, who have not come up, who do not have the privilege of the survival
and maybe
what will you tell those people who are under trauma as we speak?
I will tell them that all of us, human beings, we have personal capacities. And this is not, you don't wait that from the government. It's individual condition. Let me tell you here that in Africa, in Cameroon, in the Northwest and Southwest region, before this Western medicine came, people were exposed to trauma, and they had their cultural specificity to how to face and to cope. And that's why this lady brought some information about how she's managing to continue living in the family. This is what happened in Africa when there is a death. The way of community support with cultural support gives sometimes more support than when you go and meet a psychiatrist. That's why even the policy, if in case we have to implement a policy in this country, we should take in account the cultural specificities. So if I had to take care of her, I should have questioned, where is she from? What she talked about snails. which is a specific way of eating, of feeding herself. Those aspects are very important. The way you eat can give you some capacities. I just wanted to conclude and say that every time when there is a crisis, those who are there in the village, they should know that seeking for a support, in case you don't have it, hands up, because normally on those places, be you a journalist, be you a medical doctor, or somebody who's just passing, you are informed about this condition, you can report and help. This is the social support.
Okay.
In case you are not supported, because people are just leaving you alone, you are abandoned and you are weak. That's it. So
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Prof. We're going to, our topic is Northwest Southwest crisis victims. There are some who are now survivors from what you are telling me. Are all these people directly concerned, and some of us who are remotely affected, all mental patients? I begin with you, Professor Njamshi Alfred.
Yes, I think that we like we said at the beginning, at one point in our lives, there's a time that you feel low. There's a time that you don't feel like it if you've not slept well or if something is disturbing you. All of us go through lows and highs in life, and that is the condition of the human being. And the fact that those who are here and have relatives out there, and you are worried about your family out there, that makes you anxious. That can also lead to depression, which is mental illness. So at a distance, people can be affected at a distance. And I want to get back onto to solutions. I think that one of the terrible things that has happened to us as a nation and as a people is that these crises, the ones we are focusing on, plus the other ones that we know in the East and in the far North, are succeeding to destroy our culture, our African culture, where we are a people, a community people. Our typical traditional society is not individualistic. And that is a good thing that we've had. Unfortunately, it's being destroyed because when there is stress, be it what kind of stress, during war or any kind of crisis, people get together. And in those relationships between human beings in our traditional culture, we share one another's burden. But when we destroy the palaces, when we don't respect, when children don't respect elders anymore, you find a young person cutting an old person's head and throwing on the road. When we lose that, we become, I don't want to name any country, we become like some cultures where children just get into the classroom with a gun and kill teachers and kill. If we get to that, allow ourselves to get to that extent, we would have destroyed the very essence of our culture, of our traditions, of us, which makes us a people. And I think in our schools, from nursery, starting from the homes, to the nursery school, primary, secondary schools, we need to be able to teach our children, educate them on relationships, on peaceful resolution of conflicts, and let them grow with appreciating relationships. One of the things that has been studied as far as brain function is concerned, what makes people happy is not material things, it is relationships. When somebody has good, healthy relationships, even if they don't have money, even if they don't have material things, they feel happy. And I think we should stress that in our educational system, which begins from the home before getting out into the school.
Thank you very much. We will get into how the brain functions very soon. But Madame Julien, your experience is still haunting some of us just listening to it. What has been the relationship? You've just forgotten, or from time to time you have, I don't want to call it hallucinations. And we know you are out of it.
Thank you very much for that question. Really, sometimes there are informations in you that you cannot express until when it is triggered by such questions. This situation is something you can never forget. I live it, but I struggle to brave it, because if I don't brave it, it won't be good for me and my children.
Thank God you've been doing just that.
So there are times that I feel like I will just open the door and see my husband walking. There are times that I feel so depressed that I move around the room, touching here, touching there, going left and right, not knowing exactly what I want. And sometimes I will close myself up in the room because I will not want my children to see the experience. I have I try to Google and saw that they call it whether hysteric, something like that. Yeah, you feel like doing something, the next minute you are going this way, the next minute you find yourself in a confused atmosphere. Sometimes I dream and I see my husband coming back in the dream telling me, please, hide me at this section of the house because they are still looking for me. So it comes time and again like that. And one point I said, let me forget so that I can move on. But it keeps coming. But I thank God that gradually, until something triggers, then I come out again and say, hey, where is this man? What has happened? Is he dead? Is he alive? Will he come back? What? So when I go to funerals, sometimes I say, oh, this one is even better. That you've seen your corpse, you have touched your loved one, and you have cried, you have mourned, and you bury, and it goes off. But mine, I don't know whether I call myself a widow. I don't know what name to call myself. I don't know if one day, when I see sometimes official funerals are made for soldiers and some government officials where the flag is raised and then their corpse is there with the camera, I say, oh, my husband would have even been that kind. Let me just see it. Let them just celebrate him for once and let me forget. But then it's really, really, it's disturbing.
Sorry, the last question for you. Since you see him in your dream from time to time, and Professor Anthony also said that we should keep a margin of error somewhere. If he has gone for good and is sitting somewhere and watching us, if he were to come back today, either of these cases, what do you actually expect that he should see happen to you and the whole family that will make him happy?
Yeah, what I really expect, if he will come back, and the first thing is, sometimes when I feel like giving up, I say, but if this man comes and I am no more there, it will be worse. So it's better I leave so that when he comes, he will even be happy that I was able to withstand all the hurdles. So that's one thing that keeps me going. And the question you're asking, if he comes, what is it that I feel he will be happy about? I think he will be happy, first of all, to see the family still intact. And my dream is that if I could open up a school where I teach children how to be humane, where I teach children how to love one another, where I bring up talents, that's identifying talents and coaching the children and making them problem solvers and job creators. That's my wish, that's my dream. If I could just have a building, a structure where I open up a school for that, because I think this whole issue, if children are educated, if children are brought up in a good manner, the society will be good for everyone.
Did someone promise you something that you are still waiting?
Yes. The Minister of Territorial Administration, His Excellency Atanganji, made some promises to us that in this situation, the government will see how to give us a residence here in Yaoundé, to see how to engulf my two children who had degrees in the public service, and also to support us time and again. But since then, that promise ended in 2019.
No, find time and go and meet him. I know he has been going around helping so many people who are in this situation. Find time, go there. He will receive you. I think that that can be possible. Now, we are going to look at the brain. In all of this, the brain is the center of everything that happens in human body. Yes.
Please, before we start with the brain, let's share with our spectators that you have the condition of somebody who's dead, then she's a widow, and she said she does not know exactly what is her condition. There's the condition of people who has disappeared. The rest of the community is different. In that the condition is not the same when you are when you have just disappeared. And now, when you are displaced, or kidnapped, the condition is not the same. So mental mindset is different from situation to situation.
Okay.
Now, I wanted to say, before we come to the brain, that people who are watching the crimes they are traumatized. They also are traumatized. And saying that the communities which are witnessing this situation are very, very traumatized. And the country, which is just day by day hearing about trauma around the world, I myself, being unable to travel as I used to do before,
it's a
to
problem.
Bamenda, it's a problem.
Yes, a big problem.
This is a national concern where people who started that thing thought they were going to solve a problem. Now they put the whole country upside down. It's happening in the northwest and southwest, but it's concerning the whole country.
Yes, we are all affected.
And everybody is affected. And at each of us at its own level, we are now mentally affected. And that is why we should really be serious about what we are saying on what is happening and how we are managing to analyze and try to propose solutions so that we prevent mental disorders, so that we prevent disorders that are going to happen in the brain, and that's what Alfred is going to talk about.
What are the possible disorders that this can have on our brain, Prof?
It's trauma, whether it's physical trauma or mental trauma or what kind of trauma disturbs the functioning of the brain. The brain basically consists of billions and billions and billions of cells called neurons, which are connected to one another. And information, electrical information, passes from one cell to another. And it is that electricity in the brain from different regions that allows us to be able to be awake, to be able to speak, to be able to see, to hear, to feel, to be able to go to school and study, to be able to build enterprises as business people, to be able to do politics, to be able to do music, to do art. It is our brain. We usually say in Brain Research Africa Initiative that if the brain does not work, the rest does not matter, because we are our brains. We are what we think. Our thought is in the brain. And when there is trauma of any kind, it disturbs that chemistry, that functioning, and the electricity depends on the chemistry, molecules moving in and out of the cells, and that electricity gives us our personality, the brain functioning, biological function, and psychological functions.
Now, Prof, you've talked about physical and psychological trauma related to the war that we have, crisis, conflict, and the rest. Let's get out of that to look at some other things that cause trauma in the brain or disorder in the brain. What are these things?
There are many other things. There are infections, there are blood problems, for example, brain attacks, which is very interesting because Prof. Ntone is here. He is vice president of the scientific committee of our Brain Scan Congress that is going to take place from the 24th to the 28th. Professor Dienche is the president of the scientific committee. We also have Prof. Ongolo and others. We are going to, we have been invited, and in fact, experts are going to come from all over the world, from the US, from Canada, from Europe, and we have African colleagues to join with our Cameroonian experts at the Faculty of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences to discuss one problem that is a major problem. It is stroke or cerebrovascular accident. Simply said, brain attacks, just like we talk about heart attacks. Mm-hmm. When does a brain attack occur? A brain attack occurs when a blood vessel is blocked by a blood clot. And since blood is supposed to transfer oxygen and glucose to brain cells, which uses only glucose and oxygen to produce the energy that we need to provide the electricity that does all the work, mental and brain work that we do, then the brain cells die because they can't have the oxygen and they can't have the glucose. Or sometimes it happens when a blood vessel ruptures.
What causes the clot or the rupture?
There are different blood diseases, infections, blood diseases like sickle cell, heart conditions, hypertension.
Including trauma.
Including trauma, stress. Hypertension is one of the leading causes of brain attacks. And in Cameroon, 1 out of 3 adults has, look around this table, we have 5 of us. Yeah. So maybe 1 or 2 of us has high blood pressure.
Okay.
And 3 out of 4 who have it do not know that they have it. Mm-hmm. So Brain attacks are caused by several problems, and hypertension is number one, diabetes and other heart conditions.
I thought you were going to dive into talking about alcohol, drugs, and the rest. You've not mentioned that.
No.
And that's what we generally know in society, that these are the things that are turning young people, especially also old people who are involved into that, into conditions.
Let me say that the other way around. Let me say it in the positive. I like to be positive. If you want your brain to remain normal and function normally, then don't go into drugs, don't drink alcohol, sleep well, get enough sleep, eat well, that is, eat fruits and vegetables, do physical exercise, do intellectual work, read, write, do art, like Prof sings, I also play the drum, do music, be creative, and above all, have excellent relationships. If you are involved in this, you promote your brain health. Brain health is a new concept that the WHO is adopting to move beyond mental health, because mental health is considered now by the WHO to be part of brain health.
Prof, we see some people who have been drinking before we were born.
Yes.
They drink every day and they are living healthy, apparently. When
I'm glad you say apparently. I'm glad you say apparently.
Here you say that don't drink.
They're living, I'm glad you say apparently. If you look at some of them who have been abusing alcohol, that is, abuse is the abnormal use of alcohol.
I think the term is abuse.
Exactly, abusing alcohol.
Okay.
If you look at the way they walk, they stagger, because part of the brain that controls us to sit and not and be in equilibrium is called, at the back of the head, is called the cerebellum. The alcohol destroys that. If you test them, they might not remember things because it has destroyed parts of the brain that are responsible for memory. And if they look at their feet, they might have wounds because they might have developed polyneuropathy, the destruction of the small nerves. They appear apparently normal. They are not normal.
So, okay, Bertrand, I'll give you 2 minutes. But before I give 2 minutes to Bertrand, Prof,
yes,
let's stay on that course of
yes,
the brain destruction. What happens when somebody moves from normal state, health state, to madness? How does that happen in the brain? Because I know that it's in the brain that happens.
Well, Prof Tone is the expert on psychiatric disease. I would have liked him to answer that, but basically between neurology and psychiatry is the same thing. If the electricity does not function normally between different populations of neurons, and the chemicals that are secreted are either secreted too much or too less, there's a disequilibrium, there will be disease. And there are different forms of that disease, starting from mild neurosis to psychosis, which is like what we commonly call madness. It is that chemistry that is disrupted that disrupts the electricity.
Okay.
And there can be other causes like tumors, infections, and other things that destroy those cells and those populations. The brain really teaches us a lot, because you have populations of cells that organize themselves into groups, and different networks of groups working together in harmony to produce the brain functions that we have.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Bertrand, you have something to chip in on this topic?
Not an expert, but I think when I listen to Prof, the statistics are frightening. When you say 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, I think it's frightening. And looking at the context in which we are living, it appears the statistics should rather increase even, because he talks principally about stress. If you look at the daily challenges that Cameroonians face, it shows that they go through a lot of stress. Those searching for jobs, those struggling to have their daily bread and things like that, and then added to the crisis that we have in close to 5 of our regions. But now the problem is, do we have the personnel to handle all of this? Because when I had a chat with some medics from the Ministry of Public Health, they talk about a shortage of personnel, for instance, psychiatrists to handle the trauma issues, the mental health issues that we have in the country.
You are very correct.
Even training-wise, we do not have the expertise, everything.
You're very correct. We have limited, not that we don't have.
Very limited.
Yes, Prof.
Yes.
So
yes.
what do we say about mental Prof. Nyamji
just following what Alfred was saying.
You have 1 minute 30 seconds.
Let me just very quickly, briefly say. Inside the brain, there are things that happen, okay? But outside for the brain, that's around us. A person is not only inside the brain, you see? You can be affected by an event, a life event, that modify all the secretion in your brain. And there are some hormones in our body. When they are secreted, like what is said, you become dangerous. That's why you were talking about drugs. The effect of drugs is transforming somebody who is normal like you and I to a killer.
Okay.
That's like alcohol.
Yes.
All those crimes in Northwest and Southwest couldn't have happened in this country if there was not drugs.
Enhanced by drugs, yes.
So that's what people have to say very strongly.
Thank you, Prof. That will be your last word. We are going to listen to you. Your last word, Mrs. Julian Namata. Your last word. We're going to close the program in 1.5 minutes.
Okay. I'm so grateful to be in this platform and listen to experts, and what they have said is like giving me an insight of the experience I've gone through, and I'm trying to understand what was really happening, and I'm praying that I should never get into that, and I want to have a platform where I can share my experience with people who are going through this crisis or this condition, so that we bring them out of trauma.
Somebody is listening, and you will certainly be invited. I can assure you that, so that you go and share your experience. The last word, Prof, in 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for this forum and recognize the political will of the authorities of this nation that have recognized brain health as a major, and invite colleagues, medical students, residents to come to the Faculty of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences from the 24th to the 28th, where we have the Brain Scan Congress, bringing experts, Professor Hachinsky and African experts, so that we together see how we can improve brain health for our populations.
Thank you, and that will be improving the entire health of the human body. Thank you very much, Professor Alfred Kong-Nguyen Jamsi, the neurologist founder and CEO of BRAIN, that is Brain Research Africa Initiative. We want to thank Professor Felicien Tone Inyime, who is a mental health specialist. We thank you very much, Bertrand Do, who is desk editor in the Guardian Post newspaper. And most especially, we want to thank Mrs. Namata Julien Emily, whose experience has enlightened us and has encouraged someone out there. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for your patience. We thank you for your time on today's edition of Press Hour. Stay blessed.